Alright, in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to paint your sphere, cube, and cylinder for your color wheel. I've got my three primary colors, red, yellow, blue. I've got water, my towel, and I've also got black and white paint. I'm just going to start by filling the shape. You just want to take just plain red paint, fill the entire sphere, and I'm taking a little bit of water in between just to help spread that color. And I'm trying to make my brush strokes as smooth as possible, and I want to be mindful of my edges as I'm working. So I'm thinking about my craftsmanship here, trying to make sure that don't have a bunch of paint on the outside of my sphere. Moving slowly, and then I'm going back through the middle of the sphere and just going over those brush strokes to try and make them look as smooth as possible. Now that I've got my sphere filled in with just my red, I'm going to add my highlight. So if you remember back from our drawing unit, we learned about how to shade a sphere. It's going to be very similar. I'm just grabbing a paper towel here to dry my brush in between. That's going to help. And then I'm going to take a tiny bit of white. I'm going to place it on my sphere where I want my highlight to be. Now, at first it won't look very blended, but the trick to blending it is to take a little bit more of that first color. So I'm going to take a little bit more red on my brush, and I'm just going to sort of mix that into the white so that it doesn't look as obvious, and it helps blend it in. You can also take your finger. I like to take my finger after I add that original color back in and just kind of pat around that white to blend the edges. Next, I'm going to do my shadow. I'm going to paint my shadow along the far side of my sphere, so on the opposite side of my highlight. Just going to take a tiny bit of black. A little bit of black goes a long way. And I'm just going to place it on my sphere where I want my my shadow to be. Remember, a little bit goes a long way. It looks like I kind of used a little bit too much, so even less than I took. Then I'm going to take my original color, red, and I'm just going to go over that area where I just put the black down to try to blend it. I'm going to wash my brush so that I don't put any more black onto my sphere. And take more red and continue adding red on top of that black. The less black you use, remember, it's always easier to add black. It's harder to take it away. I'm going to take my finger a little bit, kind of spread that around. Try to get it a little bit more blended. I'm switching fingers so that I don't use, so that the black paint that's already on my finger I can take away. I'll wipe off my fingers. And then I'm going to take a little bit more red paint and go over that one last time, and it should look pretty blended. Alright, so next is my cube. All of your cubes are going to be your secondary colors, which are green, purple, and orange. I'm going to show you the green cube. The cube is pretty simple. All you're going to do is take green. So I need to mix my green. I'm going to take yellow first. That's the trick to keeping your yellow clean. Always use the yellow first. And you're always going to want to use a little bit more yellow than blue. Same thing when you're mixing orange. You're always going to want to use a little bit more yellow than red because that darker color, the blue, is going to take over that yellow pretty quickly. So I'm going to take less blue, mix it into my yellow, and then fill in the square. You're going to do the front plane is going to be just plain green. The top plane is going to be a tint of green, which means the color plus white. And then the side is going to be a shade, which means the color plus black. So I'm going to fill in my shape, being mindful of my edges, thinking about my craftsmanship. Trying to keep my brush strokes as smooth as possible. If you're struggling with those edges, it's always okay to switch to a smaller brush. Okay, so I've got the front of my cube finished. Now I'm going to move to the top. To do that, all I need to do is mix a little bit more green. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow first, a little bit less blue, mix that together. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white to my green. I'm going to take that white, just a little bit of it, and I'm going to take a section. I'm not going to mix it into the whole thing. Take a little bit more white. Wash my brush first before I dip into the white. Keep our colors clean. And mix that in. Then I'm going to fill my top plane. Mindful of my edges. Think about my craftsmanship. Then I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to pick up a little bit of black. I'm going to mix that in with my green. And then I'm going to add that to my side panel. I want it to be a little bit darker than I have it here so that I can really tell a difference between my sides. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit more black. Mix that up with my green. I'm going to be careful not to mix it with my white though. Then that would be a tone. A tone is black plus white plus a color. So gray plus a color. So I'm going to keep that separate from where I mixed my white. And I'm going to fill my side. And then last is my tertiary color. I am going to mix my blue violet simply by mixing a violet color and then adding a little bit extra blue. All of your tertiary colors are going to be the cylinders. They're the ones with 2 words, so like blue violet, yellow violet, or not yellow violet, yellow green. red orange. So I'm going to take my blue first. I'm sorry, my red first. Put that on my palette. And I'm going to wash my brush. And get a bit of blue. Make my purple. And then I'm going to take a little bit of extra blue and add that in. Then I'm going to fill my shape. I think I want it to be a little bit more purpley. It looks pretty blue, so I'm just going to take a little bit more red. Make it a little bit more purple. Being mindful of my edges again. If you're struggling with that edge, switch to a smaller brush. And be sure that if your paint starts to dry out, just add another layer right on top. Save the top of your cylinder. That's going to be a different color. And then if you remember from our drawing unit, I'm going to add a highlight right here on my cylinder. That's going to make it look more round. And then my shadows are going to be on either edge. My top will be a tint as well. So my light's coming from the top front. Okay, so I just stepped away for a minute. I noticed that my cylinder started to dry, so I just added another layer right on top. Now I'm going to take a little bit of white and I'm going to paint in my highlight. Highlight's gonna go right in here. And it's already blending because I've got so much paint on my cylinder right now. It's already blending really well with my color. I'm going to take my finger just a little bit and I'm going to blend the edge just a little bit. And then I'm going to fill in the top because I've already got white on my brush. I'm going to fill in the top. I want the top to be a tint. It's too light. It doesn't really match the rest of the cylinder right now. So I'm going to take a little bit more of my original color and just blend that in. Take a little bit more of that color. That looks better. I don't want it to look too different from the rest of my shape because then it just will look weird. Then I'm going to take just a tiny bit more white and I'm just going to go right along that edge so that I can really see the difference between the top and the front. Last, I'm going to add my shadow. I'm just going to take a tiny bit of black. And this is already pretty dark, so I don't need a ton of it. But I'm just going to go along that far edge. And then I'm also going to go right along the top. between the top of my cylinder and the side, just so that I can really tell that difference. I can emphasize that edge. I'm going to do the same thing on the other edge. Just going to go along the top and then bring it down the side.